Everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and today we are here with our R. Kelly update. And if you haven't heard already, he was denied bond, which was not a surprise, I don't think, to anybody, especially when you consider the people that you are dealing with.
Well, obviously we're disappointed. We were hopeful that the judge would let him out today. I think that's appropriate. He was talking about presumptions, and there's a presumption that he shouldn't get bond unless we could show that there were conditions that would ensure basically the safety of the community, the fact that these allegations are decades old, the fact that he hasn't done anything, there's no clear danger presently or anything like that. We thought we'd get him out, but the judge saw it otherwise.
And that was on the Chicago charges. And so he's going to be transported to New York, where he'll have a hearing on the New York charges. At the end of the hearing, he did plead not guilty to all of the charges. And so some of the things that came out of the hearing today. So we learned today that only one of the 18 counts that I read to you guys in the last video has anything to do with the 2008 trial in which he was acquitted. And this is including the New York and the Chicago case. The U.S. attorney representing the prosecution today states that there are 12 unique victims identified in the New York and Chicago cases. And so we know Rashana, we know Geronda, we know probably Lanita Carter, the Heather Williams, because I'm sure we know that they pulled the case from Kim Fox at the state level, and that those charges are either going to be dropped or they're going to be put on ice. More likely, they're just going to drop the charges against him. So we know those 4 people would definitely be included. We know from the indictment that Lisa Van Allen is one of the people. And then Faith Rogers, we kind of figured that out from the indictment. And so I'm wondering, since all of this came about from the Surviving R. Kelly reality series, that, by the way, has been nominated for an Emmy Award, which like everybody losing credibility at this point. And so I'm thinking maybe those two, the 2 chicks that Gloria Allred was parading around and saying about they were at the 1995 concert in Baltimore. So maybe those 2. Not really sure about Dominique, but I'm thinking that everybody from that R. Kelly series reality show that they had going on is probably included. And then in one of the articles that I read, they had this included, and so I was trying to figure out who this person was. It says one victim in the case has alleged that when she came to Chicago to meet with R. Kelly, she was told to go to a recording studio where she was led to a bedroom. An associate of Kelly's associates of R. Kelly's then copied her driver's license and made her sign what she thought was a non-disclosure agreement. She said she then spent 3 days locked in the bedroom with no food or water or anything. And then says that finally, after someone gave her something to eat and drink, she said she became tired and dizzy. And she woke up sometime thereafter to the defendant with her in the bedroom in circumstances that made clear he had sexually assaulted her while she was unconscious. And so that's in the court documents. So we don't know who this person was. And I'm just like, seriously? So we know we got Lindsay and Jen, the twins, the white girls who said that they used to work at the studio. But this doesn't say what year this took place, but according to Lindsay and Jen, when they were over on FaZe's channel, they were basically saying that when they worked at the studio, it wasn't even R. Kelly's studio, it was somebody else's studio, and then he just rented space in the studio, and that there were a lot of people around, and so basically it would be impossible for somebody to have been held captive for 3 days. And my thing is, so you was locked in this bedroom, how was you going to the bathroom and all of this here in the 3 days? And when they opened the door to let you go to the bathroom, why didn't you start kicking and screaming and run out? So it'd be interesting to find out who that is. And so the prosecution claims that the evidence is overwhelming. So they claim that Kelly poses an extreme danger to the community, especially young girls, and should be detained. Although there haven't been any new charges stemming from, underage girls allegedly. But the judge says that the original video was enough to detain him. And the government is arguing for no bail, saying that Kelly could easily obstruct justice from the comfort of his own home and poses a major flight risk while facing up to 195 years in prison. And the government also alleges that R. Kelly lied to pretrial services when asked about how many marriages. I guess they had a question about how many times he had been married, and that he said no, that he had not been married to Aaliyah or something like that. But then Greenberg interrupted and said that the prosecution was lying because he didn't even answer that question at all. And so how they can say that he lied about not being married to Aaliyah, is just more of their tactics. And then Greenberg also disputes the claim that his client paid to rig his 2008 trial, and in which he was acquitted. And then it also came out today that the Landfairs have come out with their attorney and adamantly denied that they received $2 million or any amount of money to lie in the 2008 case, that they were very truthful, and they were not in cahoots with him, and they weren't paid for their testimony. And so it's going to be real interesting just to follow this along and see how this goes. Because, just reading the indictment, it's like they were reading from the script of the Surviving R. Kelly series. And it'll also be interesting to see, because, they got this phone number out there, pulling one from the Kim Fox playbook where they're out there soliciting victims. And I'm thinking, child, if there really are that many victims, why haven't they come forward yet? But they're going to keep pressing and pressing and pressing, I guess, until they get some folks to come forward. And then we'll end up with a situation with like Bill Cosby, where people are just coming out of the woodwork, repeating what has been said, by other people that have come forward. So that's going to be interesting to see exactly when they get to trial what is going to be on the table. Now, based on the the information that was coming out, there were reporters that were live tweeting throughout the case, and so it just seems to me that Steve Greenberg, I know he has won some cases and he's lost some cases, but he just keeps coming back with these same bullet points. Like, to me, without hearing, exactly everything that he was saying in the hearing, we really don't know how hard he was pushing, but just from the cliff notes, we keep getting the same thing over and over from him. And so I don't know if he's aggressive enough. And then, he's talked about in his press release that I read to you guys in the last video, where he was saying that R. Kelly has assembled a federal team to work on these charges. We see these guys that are standing behind him. And so I'm assuming that these are the new federal attorneys that have been added on to the case. So I don't know if they are the ones that are going to be representing him, if they're going to get a sponsorship in New York, for those cases. I know the judge was supposed to rule earlier this week if they were going to combine the cases, but I guess they decided not to combine them, so he'll be tried in Chicago and then he'll be tried in New York as well. Oh, and then he brought up the fact that, he can't read and write, and so he's going to need somebody to be sitting there with him, going over discovery and explaining everything to him, and making sure he understands, and to get his feedback on what was going on. And that I guess it's going to be difficult to do if the legal team is in Chicago and he's being held in New York. And then he talks about his celebrity and how that's going to pose a problem for detainment. And then he brought up about his condo being paid through December. And so I get real confused about that whole thing, because I read an article some time ago, and I talked about it in one of the videos, where they say that there are no rental units in Trump Tower, that all those are privately owned. And so I don't know, and then usually with your mortgage, I know with me, you can't pay your mortgage in advance. If I send my mortgage company $5,000 today, they're not going to, spread that $5,000 over the next 5 months. They're going to take my monthly payment, apply it to this or next month, and then they are going to put the rest of it towards principal. So maybe it's different in Chicago or different with mortgage companies, but usually when you pay money up front, or maybe he has an escrow account with the mortgage company, I don't know, for the actual principal and interest balance. I don't know, but he's saying that he's paid through December or January. And so the response from the prosecution then was, okay, well, where he's going, he doesn't have to worry about paying rent for the next, after that money is run out. And so the prosecution seems to be really negative and unprofessional, based on these comments that they're making, and just some of the stuff in the indictment about, he believed he could fly, and, now we're about to clip his wings, and just being real childish. But I guess it's this reality world that we live in where people just don't take anything serious. Oh, and then they said that when R. Kelly came into the courtroom, he was actually shackled. And I'm just like, they are just doing way too much. It's like, this is not, I don't know. It's just crazy to me that the extremes that they go through. But anyway, and then you guys may have heard that Azriel and Joycelyn put out a video.
Hi, my name is Azriel and sorry. Philippe is playing with his squeaky, so if you hear that, that's what's in the background.
So remember, the rumors were out about there's supposed to be a suicide pact. Okay, well, that started with Geronda crazy behind. And so she posted this picture of Joycelyn, like it was a screenshot from the video that Joycelyn and Azriel did. And so she was talking about how sad Joycelyn looked, and that was the sign of depression and all this other foolishness. But I thought when I looked at that video, Joycelyn looked very sad, of course, because her boyfriend is locked up and he's facing all this time. But she also looked like she had been crying, which would be another symptom of if your boyfriend was locked up and accused with all this stuff and you feel helpless to help him. And so she probably is down. She probably was crying, since all of this happening, wondering why people won't leave them alone. And then also knowing that her parents and Azriel's parents are behind all of this, and that they, played a part in hurting somebody that they love.
And, Joy's parents are all over social media. Yeah, they know where I'm at. Yeah, we've been here at the Trump, we've been here for years. We move freely, we come and go freely. We actually just left out this morning, and nobody said anything to us. No one stopped us, no one, harassed us or anything like that. So, we just wanted to clear that up and let you guys know that is fake news, and do not believe everything that you hear.
And so, expectingly, she would be sad. And then we know that Azriel, she's a product of her parents. Okay, her parents are hustlers, and hustles do what hustlers do. And so I can see the differences in the girls based on their upbringing, and then also considering that Joycelyn, allegedly came from a home of abuse. But for Geronda to be speaking on these young ladies, it just goes on to show her obsession, and it goes to show that, she just really wants to be a part of the story. Like, we don't hear from the Heather Williams chick. We don't hear from the Lanita Carter chick. And we really don't even hear from the other clowns except for when they're going up accepting awards. But Geronda just all in the mix, just yakety yakking, and and how she's just trying to get the people that follow her, to see them as victims and being a part of Stockholm syndrome and all this. And I think I've said this before. If they are suffering from Stockholm syndrome, trust me, it's a whole bunch of women. A lot of y'all in y'all 20s and late 20s, early 30s, are probably suffering from Stockholm syndrome, because I done seen a whole bunch of women out here doing a whole bunch for a lot of men that we could say is Stockholm syndrome, that they have just been stigmatized. Okay, so Geronda, worry about yourself, worry about your 3 kids, worry about that baby you claim is on the way, and worry about your husband that you say left you and came back, but we ain't seen no signs of him since you claimed that he came back.
Other than that, we want to say thank you to all of Robert's fans. We see the support that you guys are showing him all over social media, Twitter, Instagram, everything. We see you guys going in, and we are just so thankful for the prayers, for the love, for the support, everything that you guys are saying and doing and trying to do to help him. We are just so thankful for it, and we love you guys for it. Thank you so much.
Where they were basically saying that they are still in Trump Towers, that R. Kelly has set them up financially, that they don't have to worry about anything. Then TMZ comes out today with their unnamed sources, which we know is probably one of the parents or one of their attorneys, that's saying that the girls, R. Kelly was paying the girls a salary because they were working as his personal assistants. And then they were able to save all the money that they were earning. So because he still paid for everything, he paid for them a place to live, all the utilities when they traveled, whatever they did. So the money they were earning as his personal assistants is their money. And then it came back and said that the person that was paying them in cash, and that person has disappeared. And so it seems to me like they're trying to set the girls up to say, one, for tax evasion, because if he was paying cash, they weren't, filing taxes, which we don't know. They very well could have been filing taxes. And to say that they were getting money, so you don't know who's feeding this information, but you know that whatever they're feeding, they have ulterior motives. And then the girls have an attorney. Her name is Gloria Schmitz. And she was either the first attorney for the Nigerian brothers in the Jussie Smollett case, or she was the second attorney, because I think they had 2 attorneys and one quit, and then the new person took over. But there was a little video of them at the courthouse. And so the girls had announced that they were going to do a press conference after the hearing was over with, but instead of doing the press conference, they just came out of the courtroom and they left. And I can only imagine Joycelyn probably was in tears, and that's why they opted not to do the press conference. So we don't know if we're going to get a press conference at a later date or not. Angelo and the Savages both came out with videos over the weekend, basically saying that they have decided, that they're going to take a break from social media.
We did not tend to put anything on TMZ. The statement is definitely not right. I've talked to my attorney, and I want to say apologetic out to the Clarys and other families. We are getting off social media for a while. This is how serious this matter is. So you will not see Timothy Savage or Johnjalyn Savage on social media for a little while until we get this, or we're going to post something that will just be something brief, but it would not be of R. Kelly. So I want to thank you guys. I'm apologetic to what happened on TMZ because that's not of us. Thank you again. Sorry to the Clary family. Please be in prayer. This is Timothy Savage. Y'all have a blessed day.
Because things are getting out of hand, and then they'll be back later. Angelo was supposed to do an interview with Tasha K. He canceled his interview. So, you know, they always got some trick up their sleeve. So I guess they're hoping that now that he's been denied, that R. Kelly has been denied bond, that the girls are going to come running home. But somehow I just don't see them doing that. And even in the video that they did, Azriel is very defiant, and I think that Azriel is going to be okay whether R. Kelly is there or not. And I believe that Azriel has learned a thing or two in the time that she has been with him, and she is she's going to find a way to survive. Joycelyn, on the other hand, she seems very timid, which is expected from someone who grew up in a house that allegedly involved physical violence, physical abuse, because we know her dad has been arrested several times on domestic violence charges. And so she definitely exhibits the behavior of somebody who has been in an abusive, has grown up in an abusive house. And so now she doesn't really have a voice. And for her to be the older one, she kind of just sits back and follows along with whatever Azriel is saying, which makes sense because Azriel is the child of some hustlers. And so she has definitely picked up some traits from her parents on how to survive out here in this cold, cold world that we live in. And then Greenberg also said in the interview that he did that all but one of the allegations against R. Kelly dates back to the 90s, and that there's no evidence that he is a risk to minors at all at this point or at any point. And he also says that there's no evidence of witness tampering. So we don't know if he's seen some of the evidence or not, or somebody's leaking it to him. But these are the statements that he's making. Avenatti, like I told you guys in that last video, I try to accept people where they are, and I try not to have ill feelings towards anybody. But that doggone Michael Avenatti grates my nerves. And every time I think of him, or every time I see him, because I try not to think of him, but every time I see him, with his little, oh my God. You guys watched that episode of A Different World where Whitley Gilbert was getting ready to get married, and Dwayne Wayne, ran up and broke up the marriage, and I love you, baby. And Diane Carroll, who played Whitley's mom, she was like, die, just die, will you? That's what comes in my mind. But anyway, this idiot holds a press conference where he said that he was going to hold this press conference on Monday, and he was going to have all of the people that he's representing. Well, child, we don't know where he was at. He claimed he was at the Four Seasons in Chicago, but for all we know, he might have been at the Four Seasons in California somewhere. But anyway, he's in this room. He's standing at this podium with all these microphones, but you know that when the media shows up to the press conference, they have a badge on their microphone. So that, one, it advertises their television station or their radio station, and then it promotes their brand or whatever. And so these microphones that he had up there, none of them had any logos, any labels or anything. It was just a bunch of microphones. And then you could only hear maybe two people in the background that were actually asking him questions. And I got to thinking to myself, this man is such a sociopath. He is, we are looking at mental illness, how people can sit there with a straight face, hold this fake press conference, and just rattle off all this stuff. But what Michael Avenatti said in his little press conference is that there are not 20 videotapes, that he doesn't know who's releasing that information, that the only videotapes that are involved in any of these indictments are the ones that he presented, And so there's only, well, the government had 4 charges in that indictment for 4 videotapes, but he's saying that there's only 2 videotapes. So that was one thing. And then the other thing he said was the girl that Azriel and Joycelyn are not being held against their will, that they were there willingly. And so it was a couple of things that he said in his little press conference that kind of dispelled, rumors that were going around. And so we don't know why he felt the need to dispel them. I guess trying to make himself look more credible. But if you get a chance to watch that press conference that he did, it's like he is in total denial about the fact that he is facing all these charges and that he himself is facing up to 400 years in prison. And then it got me to thinking, and I had posted on social media the other day, like, is he doing all of this in hopes that it's going to help his charges? But my thing is, if the government has, found you to be a fraud, found you to be an embezzler, found you to have stolen all this money from people, evaded your taxes, just all this stuff that he's accused of doing, why would they risk their case by getting in bed with you and trusting anything that he has to say? And so the only thing I can come up with is that maybe he's holding the government hostage by saying you won't get to my clients, because now he claims he has 9 people that he's representing in the case, which includes victims, whistleblowers, and all of this. So he says he's representing 9 people now, so that the government can't get their information or get their testimony. I'm not sure. And then, he also said in his press conference that a lot of the alleged victims and, people involved with R. Kelly's camp are refusing they're not being cooperative with the government, which is making the case harder. And what else did he... he pretty much just said the same stuff that he always said, but those were a couple of things that were new. And then here is a screenshot that was going around Twitter about Michael Avenatti. So Michael Avenatti blocks everybody. Like, he has blocked me, and I don't even know what I've done to him. Like, I have never... So I have 2 Twitter accounts. One is A View from Tracy's Point, and then I have my regular Twitter account. So I have talked about Michael Avenatti from the View from Tracy's Point Twitter page, which, by the way, I'm blocked out of. They're trying to get my phone number in order to reactivate the page, but the devil is a liar, and you would not be getting me to attach my phone number to any app, social media, or anything. So I was on my regular Twitter page, and somebody was sharing or commenting on something that Michael Avenatti had posted. And so it told me that I couldn't see the content because I was blocked. And I was like, okay, how I get blocked on Michael Avenatti's page when I have never commented on his page from my regular Twitter account? So I thought that was funny. But anyway, so there were all these tweets that were going around on Twitter where he is like inboxing people, doing direct message on Twitter, and he's just basically cursing people out. And so in this one tweet in particular, I'll read what he says. He basically admits to the fact that he, set this whole thing in motion, and he has set people up. And so the land fairs are represented by somebody named Christopher Brown. And so he says that the claims made by Michael Avenatti suggesting the victim did not testify in the trial because the family received $2 million payoff for their services are false and have no basis in reality. And then Brown added that the victim and her family have been... And then Brown adds the alleged victim and her family have been contacted by the United States Attorney's Office in Chicago and are cooperating with the investigation of R. Kelly. Then in other R. Kelly news, they did a documents dump yesterday as well with information on his divorce from Andrea and also the child support information. And so one thing that came out is that And this is from, I think, CBS News. It says Kelly and his wife have sparred over cash and custody of their 3 children on a regular basis since their divorce was finalized in 2009, with the courtroom battles largely shielded from public view since records were sealed in 2013. A judge last week ordered that the Kellys' files be made public, just like anyone else, after media organizations petitioned the court following R. Kelly's 3-day stint in the Cook County Jail in March for non-payment of $160,000 in child support. Case records show that the singer was ordered to pay his ex-wife more than $30,000 a month as part of the divorce settlement, with $10,000 per month designated as maintenance. Payment for Andrea Kelly that would remain in effect until 2019. The maintenance payment was removed in 2013 after Andrea Kelly remarried. In November of that year, R. Kelly paid $113,000 to settle a back child support amount. And so now we know what Drea's issue is, because her alimony stopped January 2019, and it doesn't make sense to me that he would have continued to pay her alimony when, like, the full alimony amount. So they're saying when she got married, only the $10,000 maintenance amount was dropped. But why wasn't the whole amount dropped since she got married? Because typically once you get married or remarried, any alimony that somebody is paying to you automatically ceases. So I don't know who R. Kelly's divorce attorney was, but it seemed like they didn't do him any favors. And so then it says in August of 2013, 4.5 years after the divorce judgment was entered, the singer's lawyers asked the judge to reduce those payments, citing recording industry trends. And it says Robert has seen a steady decline in his popularity, album sales, number of scheduled performances, and ultimately, as a consequence of the foregoing, his income, has been reduced. And this was back in 2013. And so in a January 2014 motion, Andrea Kelly's lawyers accused her ex-husband of hiding his money and filing detailed numerous subpoenas for royalty payments and tax records requested, as Andrea Kelly sought to, figure out what his actual net worth was. And so then there was another quote from the documents that said, Robert has gone to great extents to shelter his income and assets, and upon information and belief, to place certain income and assets in the names of others. And then 4 months later in 2014, R. Kelly's attorney said the singer, quote, has a tax liability of over $7 million. And by August 2013, the singer had paid his wife $1.48 million. So for the people that were going around, and I think y'all friend Dana J was one of them that was saying that he had paid Drea $50 million as part of the divorce settlement, that seemed to have not been anywhere in these documents that have been released so far. So more than 100 separate filings were released on Monday, with dozens more remaining under seal while lawyers redact the names of children and other sensitive information. At the hearing last week, Kelly's lawyer said he had paid his child support through July, and Drea, looks like that's going to be the last child support payments that you're going to receive. And I think that's pretty much all I have right now. I had just been collecting stuff over the days because I knew that, things were just going to keep evolving and evolving. And I'm not one of those YouTubers that, jumps online every time a breaking news story takes place. Oh, and then pay close attention to this clip of these reporters that are talking after Steve Greenberg did his press conference, because they're saying something about, so you hear them ask him if he can appeal the denial of the bond hearing, and then they ask him if he's going to, but then they start talking about something that he could do to keep R. Kelly from being extradited to New York to face those charges. So I couldn't really make out what they were saying, but it was obvious that they were saying that there was something that he could do that it seems like he's not going to try and do.
What was Mr. Kelly's reaction?
I mean, obviously he's disappointed. He's in 24-hour-a-day solitary confinement. Essentially, it's the hole, because that's the safest place for them to house them. It's at his home, no TV, no anything, no contact with other people. It's largely inhumane. Never missed a right. He's never missed a court date. He's never been late for a court date. He doesn't have a passport. He doesn't travel anywhere. He's absolutely not a flight risk. I think the prosecutor said that one of the tapes they charged was from the old case, that they've got 2 other tapes. I haven't seen the tapes. I don't know anything about the tapes. All I can tell you is that back when he went to trial in the case back in 2008, jury saw the tape, jury acquitted him. I've spoken to Mr. Kelly about the case many, many times. Potential sentence? I don't think that's, I mean, what would your reaction be? Right? You know, no one wants to be in jail. No one wants to be in jail for a day, for a year. No one wants to be told they're going to spend 10 years or 20 years in jail. So no one wants to.
So you say he's not a flight risk, but what about the argument that he is a risk of tampering with witnesses?
But he's not. There's no evidence that he ever did it. You know, it was very interesting. The prosecutors said that the people previously tampered with witnesses on his behalf. They didn't say it was at his behest. They didn't say that he knew anything about it. It says that the money came from R. Kelly. R. Kelly has paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars over the years that he knows nothing about. Nothing about. He's been robbed of everything by his handlers.
Steve, your reaction to Avenatti's claim yesterday that $2 million was paid to that witness and her family back in 2008?
I don't deal with Mr. Avenatti. We can't respond to things we haven't seen any evidence of. They're allegations, you know. That's the one thing where the judge again was talking about the grand jury. What the grand jury found that there was probable cause based on whatever they were given by the government. There hasn't been a finding of guilty. We haven't seen the evidence. We haven't analyzed the evidence. We'll start doing that as soon as they get it to us. Thank you.
Can you appeal the bond?
Yes.
Is there a waiver? What? Might be able to waive that.
They said he could waive it and potentially do a video conference or have this judge.
If he can waive his appearance,
No, it's just for the arraignment. Right. I mean, eventually he's got to go there. No, I'm saying he could have waived the arraignment. Just after that, eventually. That's just fine. He could definitely waive the arraignment. Just do it just quick.
He can do a video conference, or they can do what this judge says he can do.
But Steve was saying eventually he's got to go to the court. He can't waive like that. He can't waive anything.
So I'll continue to collect information and then bring you guys a video, but that's all I have for right now. So guys, go ahead and leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.